Good evening. You are at the 16th Gathering of Priestesses for Stepping Into Ourselves, and we want to welcome you wherever you may have come from. We have with us tonight two exceptional women who are almost legends in their own time. Max Dashu, who has done, I don't know, someone told me you have done that you've done several thousand presentations. I don't know whether that's the right number or not, but she says you've done thousands. She says she's done thousands and thousands of presentations. So, and Janine Canan, who is a poetess and poet and a beautiful woman who has, you're a holistic psychiatrist, correct? Maybe you can shrink our heads a little while we're here. We could probably use it. And
so could I.
Max is going to do a presentation on us for us this evening, one she's prepared specially for the priestesses. And I think this is going to be an exceptional evening. And I look forward to seeing all of you, or hearing from all of you as to what it is that you think about this. And first we have our commercial, which is for the anthology Stepping Into Ourselves, an anthology of writings on priestesses. And Janine is in this book several times, actually. So it's by Goddess Inc. And that's goddess-inc.com to buy a copy of the book, and if you put in the word summer 2014, you'll get a 15% discount on either the ebook or the print book. And it is a lovely book. It's not a book you necessarily want to sit down and read cover to cover over a weekend, but you can if you want to. But
it's pretty fast.
Yeah, it's pretty fat, and there's a lot of information in there, and there's some pieces in there that you're going to want to read several times. So, and then there's, this gorgeous poetry, and a lot of information about being a priestess, or what a priestess means, or the historical background. So I'm so pleased to have Max here tonight so that she can help us with that. So I only have one question that I have prepared, and that question is always the same. What drew you to being on the path of the priestess? And Janine, we're going to begin with you.
Well, this is going to turn into the poet as priestess. But first I have to say that, of course, it never occurred to me that I wanted to become a priestess as a child. Maybe a nun, but then none of the orders suited me. And I thought, well, do I need to start an order? But that seemed overwhelming. So, given that I was about 13 years old. Later on, I found my order. It was Amma, and her order, the Order of the Divine Mother, and selflessness and giving and all the good, beautiful things that we love and we hope the world becomes more and more full of all the time. But in my childhood, growing up in Los Angeles in the 40s and 50s, and then college in the 60s, and medical school in the 70s, growing up in what I consider to be perhaps the most masculinist culture that has existed in human history, oddly enough, I grew up in a very feminine family. My father was quite feminine, so was my mother. I have two sisters, so we were kind of a nice little female society. And the big shock came later on when I left home. But by then, in fact, at the age of 13, my calling had already been called out to me, and I had accepted it. I was already planning to become a psychiatrist, and I was totally in love with poetry. I was immersed in it. So I've been on that path my whole life without any qualms or conflict, and I love it. But the big shockaroo came as more and more I entered society in my 20s, especially my 30s in medical school, and I discovered that all of these unbeautiful incompetent, and to me, selfish critters who happen to have penises were convinced that they were superior to all the beautiful women I knew. This is something I couldn't grasp, and I still can't grasp, and I continue to write about. Meanwhile, at this stage of my life as a holistic psychiatrist and a mystic feminist poet, all of my work is dedicated, I would say, to the empowerment of women, which is, we know, those of us here, crucial to the survival, the very survival of the planet and the well-being of the planet and every being on it, every pebble, every molecule of air is praying as hard as it can. Please let the women become empowered. And this is not a small task. There's 3.5 billion of us about, and women have been so abused for so long, thousands of years, that we're all in varying stages of unfolding. But the great news is that more and more women are really reaching out to other women, and we're helping each other along our path, helping each other to heal, to be powerful, to be our true, beautiful, radiant, glorious, fabulous, intelligent, conscious, loving, selfless selves that we all have the potential to be. And the important thing about the priestess is the one who invokes the goddess. And everyone has a priestess inside. She's so ready to invoke the goddess within you so that you can be in your full glory, in all of us, within myself, within all of you. She's just there, I promise you, I know, ready, so ready to open the doors. But we have to tune in. We have to ask for it. We have to make our effort. It's really a great honor for me to be here with Max. We've never done anything officially together. Maybe we were in something that I can't quite remember because I have added on to my 71-year-old memory a little bit of chemo brain from this recent medical treatment I've been through. So maybe we were in something. I certainly have been with Max at many events. And
Chanting in San Ramon.
Oh, okay, there you go. I knew it. We could not. Chanting in San Ramon, and I've been at your slideshows way back. And I revere Max for this solitary work she has done all by herself for half a century, gathering the images that do honor women. And she knew how important that was from day one. And back in the 70s, she starts up, and nothing is stopping her. And that's the way we all have to be. And I've been kind of like that too. And I've been doing a similar thing in the realm of language and poetry because I felt a deep inner compulsion to invoke the beautiful, powerful, conscious female imagery in the endless forms of the goddess. And she inhabits everything. She's life itself, consciousness itself. So she's absolutely everywhere. We don't have any trouble finding her. Maybe just acknowledging her, especially in ourselves. So that's a bit of an introduction. Maybe I just want to mention a few of the really great influences in my life that have helped me so much on this path. Maria Gimbutas, who a Lithuanian archaeologist and archaeomythologist who did the major digs in Eastern Europe way back in the 70s and was the author. She's passed away. She was the author of Goddesses and Gods of Old Europe, Language of the Goddess and Civilization of the Goddess. These are major, crucial works which I totally recommend to everybody in the audience. If you're interested in knowing the deep history of Europe and that civilization of the goddess in the Neolithic, predating the patriarchal period, is very, very, very real. And of course, Max's imagery is full of some of those images going back, way back into the Neolithic and even the Upper Paleolithic. the oldest image that I have that means so much to me is the first human face on Earth that we have so far, a female face, of course, carved out of mammoth tusk, and found at the foot of the Pyrenees Mountains in southern France, a very ancient place, France, tracing its heritage all the way back to the Paleolithic without break. And she's quite small, and she's very refined and elegant, as we are. And she was perhaps, it's speculated, placed over the entrance to a cave where people were then living, or at least, part of the time. And it had fallen down into the mud, and someone eventually found it. I've spent time in that region. I really love it a lot, and have been in some of the caves. Then another important influence, crucial influence for me in my own thinking and understanding and realization that it doesn't have to be like this. One of the things we're always up against is, well, this is the way men are. This is the American brainwash. This is the way men are, take it or leave it. They're just violent. That's the way they're born, and they're obsessed with sex. That's the way they're born. This is simply not true. There are civilized societies everywhere on this planet where men don't behave that way. And there are living matriarchies on every continent today, which very few people know about. On television, on linked TV, BBC program, on the Kuna. So beautiful, so moving. I was in tears because there was so much love going on between the Kuna matriarch, her husband, who was equally loving and helpful and totally attuned and full of art, and how taking in this poor British career woman who had just been worked over by patriarchy and didn't have any kind of real self-esteem. And as soon as they saw her, they realized she's our daughter and we have to fix her. And they actually do this. There's such an outpouring. The whole tribe just turns its total attention onto this being. Can you imagine a society where that you feel good about yourself and know how beautiful you are is like the #1 concern today and all day long today and tomorrow and as long as you're here? So tears were streaming down my face. It's kind of like going to visit Amma. It's more of the same. Amma is also from a region in Kerala, South India, that was matriarchal, and women still go home to their mothers when they have a baby, and they stay there the first 9 months with their mothers. And in matriarchal societies, and the world expert on living matriarchies is a German woman philosopher named Heide Göttner-Abendroth. She has written many books. There's a new one out, Matriarchal Societies. And from her, over the years, I've learned so many crucial things, but I won't go into detail because I don't want to go on too long here. But I would say that Maria and Heide, and then of course Amma, most of all because she really lives that love every second. And I've been with Amma for 25 years, so I've had a lot of time to observe her in every possible situation. And she just is, the more time you spend with her, the more mind-boggling it all is. But she's radiant with pure love, and it's a good way to experience the love of the mother if you just go and receive her embrace one time. It's a great blessing.
Yeah, Amma is referred to as the hugging saint, right?
Because she embraces everybody who comes, and she doesn't get out of her chair, doesn't go to the bathroom, doesn't eat, doesn't leave until everybody has received her embrace and her blessing. Yeah, she hugs.
That's quite wonderful. I experienced some of the Kuna Indians when I lived in Costa Rica. A friend of mine had been in the Peace Corps, and she had served down in southeast Costa Rica, where a small offshoot of the Kunas live. And she actually married one of the Kuna men and had three children by them. But she had gone back to San Jose and become a teacher after and taken the kids back there for part of the year. and she was going to visit the tribe, and she had me come down and meet them. And it's hot there, okay?
Oh, yeah.
It's really hot and humid. It's Caribbean. People don't wear much clothing, but boy, do they like to touch skin to skin. I mean, you're constantly, the kids are like constantly wanting to hug you and hold you, and they'll come and they'll lay across your shoulder and put their head on your shoulder and go, they love you. Me amo, me amo, me amo. I love you, I love you, I love you. And so, and the women would sit with their arms around each other, like, you know, when they were just sitting, they would just sit with their arms around each other, and the men would lay in their hammocks, and then the kids would crawl in the hammocks on top of the men and snuggle in. And it was quite wondrous and quite different from anything a white girl ever experienced. And, you know, I kind of went, oh, it's hot, stay away from me. But, you know, they didn't want to do that. So I was there for about 3 days, and I can't imagine what it was like for my friend who lived there for 2 years, but I can understand why she ended up marrying into the tribe. So, so Max, the question for you is, what took you on to this path of this great scholarship and the path of the priestess?
Well, I wanted to look for free women. That was my starting point. Mm-hmm. Is there any place on the planet where women are still free? Or were ever free? And so that led me to looking for mother rights societies, what some people call matriarchal societies, and also just a whole study of the origins of domination. And in this search, I discovered that among the various female spheres of power that I discovered, the priestess was very high up in there. And this is a whole range. When I say priestess, medicine woman, prophet, oracle, seer, all kinds of different women of power in the spirit. Mm-hmm. That was really significant. Even sometimes in patriarchal societies that had non-equal relations between men and women in marriage and in society, the economics even, still some of them had and still have this sphere of power of the priestess, and it would be a way in which the spirit or goddess flowing through woman would infuse her to the point that it would abrogate all codes of domination. Mm-hmm. That the authority of spirit coming through her and the inspiration of the healer and the seer and the dreamer would just negate those codes and bring about a situation where people, in their desire for illumination or guidance or whatever it was that was their issue, would accept that which otherwise was not accepted in a dominance-based society. And for me, part of this search was really trying to recover this out of my own European heritages and to see what was there. And I think in some cases, and that's not the only part of the world, where you have layers upon layers upon layers, like Janine was saying, sometimes thousands of years of patriarchy. Depends on where on the planet you're at, how long that span is. In a lot of places, it's because it's since the conquest, 500 years plus, but it really varies. And so I really wanted to look into the witch traditions of Europe, and looking in a positive way at the pagan, or you could call it the ethnic traditions, the ethnic religions, the folk spirituality of Europe. Not only in the Neolithic period, which is a very strong era, but even going deep into patriarchal times, we have heritages that are there to be uncovered. Just pull away the layers, and it's like pushing aside the snow and seeing the green shoots coming up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That there are all these legacies that we can access. And so one thing is to learn about those. There are stories, there are symbols, there are certainly goddess images from the ancient Gaulish world or different parts of Europe, different traditions, but the old goddess and her ways as a spinner, and how that ties in the fates as spinners, tying in with actual rituals of spinning and weaving that women performed. This, like Native American societies, was integrated. The spiritual is integrated with the work of daily life. It all has spiritual significance, so that's a non-split consciousness that's active in those kinds of settings. And, the witch was very demonized. We have this whole devil worship narrative that arose out of Christianity, and part of the imposition of this official state religion on Europe was a process of barring the priestess from her sacred spheres, from recognition of what she had to offer socially, medically, or whatever areas. And so that's been a lot of my work, is to trace that and to also compare it with traditions of female shamans and medicine women and seers in other parts of the planet, and see what do we have in common. Because, there's this erasure that happened in Europe, and it wasn't the only place. There were overthrows also in Western Asia, in China, places where you have historic spheres of power for medicine women, which are then uprooted, forcibly uprooted and outlawed. And, women are just basically ruled out as a source of spiritual wisdom or guidance or leadership. So I set out to try and document about as much of that as I could. And also, in the process of doing that, it was an uncovering and a learning for me. That whether it's the cosmologies, the nature-based cosmologies, or you could call it spiritual philosophies. There's a lot of ways we could look at this instead of the template of religion. What they had to teach us. Was there a question?
Mm-mm.
Oh, yeah. So symbols, rites, stories, the descriptions of this role of priestess or wise woman. And some people are less threatened by the word wise woman than witch, but I like to reclaim the witch because of this process of colonization. I call it the internal colonization of Europe, that you have the older layers of indigenous culture being plastered over by, like cement, in the form of religious doctrine, all masculine religious authority, refusal of recognition of the female divine. And so that's something we've been all on a journey to recover. And there's just many ways of approach to this. And so that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, my friend Raven and I have both had memories of working at the library in Alexandria, and of trying to save the books whenever they were using them to burn them for tinder, and to experience being basically knocked down and trampled, and that being the end of our lives, because we were trying to protect the books and protect the knowledge. And in many ways, for both of us, that has informed this life, that memory, because we're both total knowledge addicts and book addicts, and trying to find out the hidden wisdom and knowledge that it seems like somebody goes out of their way to keep away from us. And
well, some of them do. They do go out of their way. And then there's another part, which is that which is not written in books. And this is a very important strand to follow, because in indigenous societies, most cases, there's not a written tradition. And so there's a word for this in academia. They call it orature.
Right.
You have literature, and then you have orature. And so it's oral tradition. And so there's these long lines of transmission, mouth to ear, mouth to ear, mouth to ear, down countless generations. And so that's something that it's of a different nature. It's and it really interties with symbols in a very powerful way, because it's not that kind of linear, like the alphabet and the god is kind of story where you're saying, well, there's this linearization of culture and of the mind that happens very literal and very literally literal, and very fixated, and right brain, left side, right brain. Is that, did I do that right? No, left brain. The mathematical mind.
My husband says that since he's upside down left-handed, he's the only person that's in his right brain. So
the right mind.
Right mind.
So, it's a funny expression. I wasn't in my right mind.
Yeah.
Because the left mind, the dreaming side, is a whole other thing. That's a capacity that Western Civ suppressed. I mean, you think about how we're trained in schools, and you are literally supposed to sit down and be still and be quiet and answer when called on. But all of this speech that is rolling into our consciousness from the vastness is then forced to be suppressed. We learn to lose that connection. Most people do, to one degree.
That's what real poetry is all about. Real poetry, and don't get confused by some of this other stuff that passes for poetry today in this country. But I have a poem, Gloria, to read to you. Okay. Connected to what you were saying about Alexandria, because I wanted to read two priestess poems. One of them was is in Anne Keyes and Candace Kant's wonderful anthology, Stepping Into Ourselves, Inanna's Chant. And the second one's called Priestess. I'll read Priestess first. Okay. Because, of course, Sappho was the priestess of the goddess Aphrodite. And Aphrodite was the great goddess. Priestess. Aphrodite's daughter, Priestess Sappho, singer with lyre, into whose ear whispered lovely Erato and holy Polymnia. Touching the foot of the golden goddess, she turned into gold. In Alexandria's towering flames, her songs rise eternal. We can never forget what happened in Alexandria. Right. The burning of that library. Anybody who cares about culture, books, and
pictures. There were pictures there. There were images there. There were icons there. That
one of the very great libraries in human history. Yeah, and that's where her work was really totally eliminated. Her work has been expunged. We just have a couple of poems and some lines here and there, and yet she is indestructible. It makes no difference. And here's Inanna's Chant. This poem, of course, Sappho goes back to about 400 BCE. Inanna's Chant, the goddess Inanna, that goes back about 4,000 years in Sumeria and the Mideast. The oldest known human, poet is, I guess they're all human.
Maybe. We can have that discussion too.
Okay, yeah, I know. Enheduanna, it was a priestess of the goddess and other gods about 4,000 years ago. And she was priestess to Inanna. Inanna was really the great goddess, and there's a lot of literature that survived inscribed in clay tablets. And from all of this, all of that inspired this poem. It's really a universal poem to the great goddess. It's called Inanna's Chant. Heaven is hers, earth is hers. She is a warrior, she is a falcon. She is a great white cow. She fought the dragon and slew it. She seduced the scorpion and tamed it. The golden lion sleeps at her side. She is the singer. She is desire. She is the mountain of silver and gold and lapis. On her hips tall trees grow and grasses. From her water spout and savory rains. Her lap is holy. Her lips are honey. Her hand is law. Her breast pours heavenly rain. She is the healer. She is life giver. She is the terror, the anger, the hunger. Fierce winds blow from her heart. Hers is the thunder, the lightning, the glory. She is the morning. She is the evening. She is the star. She wears the gown of mystery. Heaven is hers. Earth is hers. Who can argue?
Beautiful.
The holy lap of Inanna.
Yeah. Well, we have a question here from Joyce Yonacha. She says, I don't understand, Max and Janine, how women were so seemingly systematically wiped clean from history in so many different parts of the world so thoroughly.
I think that, there's a real threatened feeling that comes about women's power when there's a desire to enforce a system of male domination.
Mm-hmm.
And that can become, it's like someone who's obsessed. They can never hear anything that disagrees with their viewpoint. They can never see anyone enact anything that is against those beliefs. You see it with fundamentalists now. We get a little taste of that. And if you can think about the elite men in power systematically imposing controls over what is seen and done, what is visible publicly, who officiates in temples, whose books are preserved. There's all these levels, and it doesn't have to be conscious. There are people always saying, oh, there was a conspiracy. It doesn't have to be even planned like that. It just has to be a systemic bias against female power, a feeling of being threatened by that, to bring about a consensus, not a conspiracy, but a consensus that we can never allow this. That we can't stand to see it, and it can be on an individual level, and it can be on a systemic, culture-wide level. And it is on all those levels. And so when that goes on for centuries and millennia, this is what you get, is where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is pretty mind-boggling.
It's also about money. It very much was about money. The doctors didn't want the midwives to be delivering babies because delivering babies was a very lucrative thing to do. The priests didn't want the priestesses doing the work of the priestess because it was very lucrative to have them come into the temples and give their gold to the priest to intercede between them and the god. And
well, it was lucrative. There's no question about that. But I think power is also a really big, some people want power more than money.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's three causes of three desires: money, sex, and power. And in the case of most priests, they got all three. So what is it they say? The trifecta. To be able to have all three at one time. I mean, and any man who was willing to endure whatever required to make him be a priest could get there. He didn't have to be born into it, or in some traditions they did. But that was one of the things that when they came here to America, the Native Americans couldn't understand the priest. They couldn't understand why he was the way he was. They couldn't understand why he would, suppress people or hurt people, or, because they didn't believe that a holy person was supposed to do those sort of things.
Correctly, too.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, Janine, you look like you want to share something with us. I'm watching you there.
Well, I'd like to share some of these newer poems. Is this a good moment?
Yes.
All right. Starlight, you are all that exists and all that does not. Words are gems that could be stars in your flashing firmament. We are diggers prospecting diamonds, rubies, emeralds, and gold. divers hunting for pearls in this upside-down world of heavens and hells. You are all that exists and does not exist. We are diviners learning how. Woman, I am not an aesthetic object. I don't really care what color looks good on me, for I am what colors the earth most beautifully. My skin blends perfectly with the sands. My eyes flow with the sea. My smile blooms with flowers. My light shines inseparably with the sun. My darkness glows with the moon and the stars. And when your eyes have opened, you will see. Invocation. Mother Earth, it is not you who need to be invoked, for you are always here. But we, your human children, who today must be invoked, who have abandoned you, forgotten to call upon you, neglected to care for you, failed to serve you, and disregarded your needs. Help us now to awaken and remember our obligations to you and all Earth's beings. Let your spirit fill us with love, appreciation, joy, and overwhelming desire to serve you in all that we do. May we think, speak, and act as one family of one mother who gives life to all and when it is time, takes it away. Guide us, Great Mother, in every decision we make, every habit we develop, every action we undertake. May we never forget you again, beloved Mother Earth, beautiful and bountiful source and resting place and wonder.
And Janine said something when we were doing our rehearsal earlier, in that she, in many ways, was paralleling Max's work. Hers in words, Max's in images. And I think, you know, it would be wonderful to see the two of them together.
I'd love to. You're lucky, Max. I love to. There's enough time. She has so much work before her, and so do I. We have so many projects we want to complete.
Oh my gosh, it's such a juggle.
Oh, I know it's bad. I have so many finished books.
I understand. I just found a half-finished book that I completely forgot about.
Oh, there you go. See,
well, I wish I could forget about them. All right. Here's another really short one.
Okay.
Called You Are Not Alone. Mother is here, streaming live to every receiver tuned in.
Mm.
Oh, that seems very appropriate somehow contextually.
Doesn't it?
I mean, many layers of meaning to that one.
Yeah. That was my prayer, that she would flow through it, that she would flow through us.
Yeah, well, that was lovely.
That's what Alma talks about, you know, the rain of grace is continually falling. So it's just
that
the idea of being open and aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Yeah, she says the stream of grace is always right next to you. All you have to do is step in. It's always here. Just step in. Or she says, you know, Mother is always present, but we have to tune like a radio. We have to tune ourselves in. Otherwise, you know, you just get static or some other station that maybe isn't very enlightened.
Yeah, I have an Indian friend who wants, a woman friend, who wants us to do a tour of the goddess temples of India, because I've done Egypt, and she wants me to do the goddess temples of India. She says, however, there are so many of them, we would have to be there for a very long time. And I'm like, okay,
that's true.
Cool.
Oh, yes, that's true. No, I think you could devote a lifetime to going into the goddess temples of India.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Just the 51 Shakti Pitas right there.
Yeah.
I
think that's well.
I mean, there are little ones everywhere. Everywhere you go are little Durga temples. And,
Yeah. Well, thank you, Janine. You want to read me one more?
There's one more. Well, I have to read this one because these last two, they're very short. Women have, in our culture, where there's such deep misogyny and disrespect and dislike of women, have so much endless, bottomless problems with their bodies. And so I want to read this poem called Sanctum. Divine body, gift of the goddess, every cell luminous with love and magic, patient, wise, and laughing. Through you passes all-knowing, softly kissing each atom like a child. Glory dwells in all things. There is nothing in this world that is not suffused with divine light, beauty, wisdom, and glee.
Lovely. Now you have a number of books of poetry out there, I know. So and I gave the titles of them in your bio. So if people would like to buy some of those, you have a website
you can find me. You know where you can find everything, and then you can come to my website and learn about my books. JanineCanan.com, JanineCanan, spelling.com. You can find out about all the books. And I just finished an app, which will be out this fall, called Mystic Bliss. My last book of poems is Ardor, Poems of Life. I've done a couple of selections of Amma's teachings. The newest one is Garland of Love. The old one, Messages from Amma, is only available right now as an ebook. And I'm working on a new big one, which I hope to be able to finish, called Love is My Religion.
Oh, lovely. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well,
and I
thank you.
just will close with this. Hail to the Great Mother. To her I bow down. On behalf of her, I rise up. Toward her, I spread in every direction. In her, I live. For her, I love and serve. As her, you know me, and I know you. All hail.
All hail. Well, I'm going to change over and turn the screen over to Max because she has created a presentation for us that we want to see. So we're going to say not goodbye to Janine, but goodbye to her smiling face. And she has been such a light through this whole program. If you look at the picture on Facebook, she's the one right in the middle. So it's like every time I look at that page, I see her face shining through, and it's in many ways it has buoyed me up whenever I've had problems, and to know that she's there smiling at me and putting her light and her image into this. And Max, I want to thank you as well. In case I don't get a chance to get back on, I'm going to try. I'll try and get back on at the end and close it out. But if I don't, I want to thank you for being here. And I also want to remind you people that our last show in this series is Friday, and it's Normandy Ellis, my dear, darling co-author, co-conspirator, Normandy Ellis, and Nano Boy Nagel from Austin, Texas, who has some really interesting things to say. And would like to have you back here and invite your friends, and who knows where we'll go with that combination. But I'm going to change it over, and this is a tricky bit. I'm
going to stop sharing my webcam right now. Should I click that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. There we go. Okay, go for it.
All right.
Tell me when we're in.
Okay. I'm making you the presenter.
Okay, maybe Janine can tell us what's visible for...
Right now there's me and there's Gloria.
Okay, I got show my screen. Here we go.
Okay,
All right,
so now you start
should
showing
be able
your
to
screen.
see my screen. I'm going to close the viewer out here. All right, can you
Oh,
see the
look.
screen?
Yes, we can see your screen, and we're still there.
Okay. Yeah.
That's
See,
pretty
this
cool.
is how I do webcasts like this on GoToWebinar all the time, and this is one way that I get to share my work more widely. So you get to see basically a PowerPoint with me talking with it, and so that's how that works.
Excellent.
So, oops, and I'm on the wrong slide here. That I wanted to actually start with this one. I'm just going to share a few images out of a new show that I have called Legacies of the Priestess. And really looking back into the deep past with the images that we have of this. And this is a part of the world you don't usually hear about priestesses, which is Eastern Iran. Mm-hmm. So there are a number of cylinder seals that have a great goddess who is usually shown with serpents rearing up out of her shoulders. She's seated in a shrine here. You can see birds and other beings around here. And here comes a line of women advancing toward her in procession, and they're holding serpents at their waists. Mm-hmm. Snakes are throughout these seals. There's about 3 of them that I know of, but there's other regions in Iran that have this same iconography. And then you see a woman playing a lyre and a woman playing a drum. See the breasts? Mm-hmm. It's a woman. Okay. There's another one here I'll show you just briefly. So there's these ceremonial scenes of women doing puja, basically. There's a ritual here around an altar with these women facing it. And then up here is the goddess inside of her numinous shrine. This time she's holding a snake. And here you have women doing ecstatic dancing. Mm-hmm. You know, so this is just testimony out of a past that is no longer recorded in any other form except in image. And we've had this, of course, out of Mycenaean Greece. You have ecstatic dance. The Cretan tradition, even older. And this one's a little hard to make out, but you can see her body is really contorted in ecstasy. Her head is thrown back. It looks as if her arms are turning into branches. You know, so this is like a transformative shamanic event. And you'll get a lot of these dancing priestess figures. Ariadne herself in the Greek traditions about Crete. She's a priestess, but she's also a dancer in the labyrinth. And so, of course, the famous snake woman of Knossos, there's that whole conundrum. Is this a priestess? Is it a goddess? And I ask, what does that question really mean? You know, how can we really draw a differentiation if the priestess is bringing the divine through into her body? You know, she's manifesting it. So, actually, my controls. I'm gonna zoom to. We could go on and on through Crete, but I'm just gonna zoom through these a little bit to show you a few other things. Janine was earlier talking about Enheduanna, who was a priestess of Inanna as well as other Sumerian gods, and she is the first named known author in the world in this exaltation of Inanna. That's Ninmeh Sarra. That's the name of this famous poem that is our oldest piece of world literature identified by author. And this is from a disc showing her in a ceremonial procession where you see her here now, where you've got other people in the procession. There's a ziggurat in the background. There's an offering vessel. There's a lot of aspects of priestess where many of the ritual acts are things that women do in the household. Pouring out drink, offering food, just acts of caring. In Indian pujas also you have acts of bathing the deity, which is also something that the Egyptians and other Mediterranean peoples did, where you would immerse the icon of goddess in the sea or in the river. This is a reconstruction of that same period with Enheduanna. And you can see the important role of music in calling us into consciousness, and the ecstatic dance, which is so prominent in the Indian tradition, but in ancient times also musicians and singers in the Syrian world and other parts of ancient West Asia. There's a little piece that I found about Syria as late as the 3rd century. Women were still holding competitions. They would choose priestesses by who could most beautifully sing the litanies, you know, the singing of the divine names. Here's another very rare piece that this is my drawing of it that I made to be used in the Woman Shaman DVD that I put together. And you've got, again, a goddess seated, or maybe it's a priestess, but I think with this flaming mane that it's probably a goddess. She's holding a vessel in one hand, and she's pouring something out with her other hand. There's a shrine there behind her. And then you've got women advancing with a sistrum in the hand. This one has bells. This may be the menat, which is another Egyptian instrument that was kind of like a shakery. It's a beaded necklace that could be a percussion instrument. And so this is the priestess. You have the dance, invocation, incantation, movement, sacred theater, offerings, and both food and drink figure very strongly in this. Ritual paint-up, ecstatic trance, prophecy, the passing of manifestation of the divine through the body of the priestess. So this is where there's that very murky border between a priestess and a shaman, or a medicine woman. So, okay, zooming past the drummers, you've got all those different aspects of music here. Again, is the sistrum from ancient Egypt, where this instrument originated. And we can see images from really pre-dynastic times of the invoking woman in a riverboat. We know from Herodotus that women had ritual processions in boats up and down the Nile on the festivals of Bast and Hathor and other goddesses. Okay, I'm going to zip across here. I'm going to get to some other regions. Well, here, this is important. This is Sudan, which you don't hear much about. And we have over on the left here Aminirdis, who was a royal priestess. And so this is very important. The title in the New Kingdom period was God's wife. This is a title that's given to royal women who are priestesses. And these were very powerful figures. But there's a lot of other priestesses that you never even hear of. There are some tombs of priestesses in Egypt that survive. Some of them are tattooed priestesses of Hathor. And you can see a little bit glimpses of the ceremony where they're drumming and singing in honor of the goddess, the Queen of Heaven, dancing. Kinds of dance that are really yogic. I mean, how far apart is this image from the triangle pose in yoga? That this is part of the transformation of mental consciousness through the body. And that's really a shamanic path, is going through the body in order to expand the mind, to get the full dimension of our consciousness. Okay, so let's leave Egypt. I want to get down here to Asia a little farther. Okay, there's Spain. Here we go. China. And this is a place you don't really hear people normally talking about priestesses, but there are offering vessels from about 25 centuries ago in this one window of time where you see a lot of images, very clearly women, in the way their skirts are represented and their coiffures, dancing with staves, running up the steps of temple, inside of temples, making offerings with the bronze offering vessels that we're actually looking at these scenes on. They're drumming, and you've got scenes of birds and other animals dancing among them. You've got women playing on horns, playing on gongs suspended from the temple roof, and chimes, stone chimes, and other things like that. So this is a whole window into a world that hardly ever gets shown to us. You can look at just about every part of the planet, and in Australia you will find it being called women's business, the ceremony that only women had the right to do. The sacred places that belong to their mysteries. And so here we're seeing it in ancient China, and this is something that eventually was, it wasn't totally stamped out because you still have female shamans in China, but you still have persecution as well, by the Communist Party. This is considered to be backwardness. It's a very important cultural legacy. But these are scenes that give us a look into that ancient past. Okay, and the same with Japan. I want to go down because we're going to run out of time here to the Americas. And there is a very strong priestess tradition in northern Peru among the Moche people, who were a patriarchal culture, but you'd find medicine women shown with drums and rattles. Sometimes they're also shown with wachuma, which is San Pedro cactus. And so they're chewing these cactus buttons, kind of like peyote. They're casting lots. Here it's colored kernels of corn in divinatory ceremonies. And there are actual burials of these priestesses. One of the sites that has generation after generation of women spiritual leaders is a place called San Jose de Moro in this same region. And so you'll find masks in their burials. You'll find all kinds of regalia, sacred objects. Here's another one from a slightly later period at Chornancap. This is a place, it's priestess of Chornancap. And she was buried with a copper mask, a mantle made out of pieces of copper and other kinds of precious metals. She had a staff. Here's the little shot of the mantle with shells in it. And here's the sacred mask, which is just kind of amazing. And then a collar made out of seashell beads. And so this is something that those of us coming out of the European traditions, we can find this in ancient Crete, but it's not nearly as recent. The living tradition of priestesses that are untrammeled by interference from patriarchy is much closer to the surface in these parts of the world, in Africa, in South America, in various parts of Asia, Siberia, for example. And so you do have the shamanic dimensions showing up. So these are just a few examples. I see we're coming up close to our...
We're okay. Don't worry about it.
We're okay?
We're fine.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to show you a couple then from Maya tradition. And this is a part of the world, there is a very rich iconographic record among the Maya, but you do see a very strong preponderance of male leadership in most of the art. But there are exceptions that show us that priestesses were present. You see this very elaborate headdress with quetzal feathers that she's wearing. She's gesturing. You can see from her open mouth that she's speaking or probably chanting. She's called into manifestation, and she's actually interacting with one of the royal male figures. And so there are a few images that give us a glimpse of this female sphere of power. And so here again, the fancy headdress. A lot of times they are wearing feathered bustles on their backs, which you also see in Aztec art. And these are often attributes of deities. And so it looks as if they may have actually been enacting their deities in these ceremonies. Oh, here's another one. You just get a very glimpsing. You see ritual fans, which I also talk about in the Woman Shaman DVD. Whether they are bundles of herbs or whether they're bundles of feathers, using these to cleanse and to whisk away negative energies. This is, again, part of the shamanic tradition. And you can see what a beautiful artistic history is going on here in Guatemala, in the Maya country. There's another one of these ritual fans, which are also, they call them prayer fans in Pueblo country, way up here in North America. Something very widespread, this use of feathers in ceremony and also in healing in North America and Central America. Okay, and I love this one because I find this one so imbued with the essence of sacredness. This gesture of the hands crossed over the heart and this prayerful and inspired look, this slight curl of a smile to the mouth and the far-seeing eyes. She is present in the deepest sense. She's in a state of divine union. And one of the women who are studying these priestess traditions, Felicitas Goodman, has proposed that these positions, like the mudras and the karanas in the Indian tradition, that actually by assuming these poses, another one will be the hands closed against each other over the heart, very familiar to many people as the namaste gesture, will actually bring you into states of consciousness. So they are not only icons of devotion, but they may also be pointers of entry, like portals for our consciousness to go into these deeper states of union with the divine. And so this is a deity, but she's shown with attributes that are linked to priestesses. In other words, the priestesses probably would have worn these types of elaborate headdresses. This is folded paper, the amate cloth paper that was used by the Mexicans and the Maya. So that's a few examples of those. I'll hear it from the other side, Western Mexico. You've got, again, the sacred fan. And incantation. So invocation, the word invoke, literally means to call in. You know, vocal, right? Voice. Those words are from the same root in the Indo-European languages. And so this is a basic power of the priestess. She, by calling the names of deity, she begins to envision the nature of the divine to her hearers, and actually bring the divine into presence in their consciousness and into the space. And so you have just layers and layers of this all over the planet. The arms raised in invocation. This is a gesture especially associated with women, whether you're in Libya or Arabia or some parts of Australia. Ancient Mexico is, as you can see here, full of them. We see them in Greece and other parts of the Mediterranean. And so we can go back through Egypt, through Nigeria, through ancient southern Africa, through the Sahara, and see this same symbolism coming up cross-culturally. Not because these societies were linked to each other historically, but because this is a universal human way of calling the divine. How are we doing on time there, my girl?
We're doing fine. You know, one of the things about that gesture is that the symbol in Egypt for the soul is the symbol of a human with another set of arms coming up out of their head. Raise
the ka symbol.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's something that, you know, and the Egyptians actually had 7 different names for soul or spirit. Mm-hmm. You know, they have the Ka, the Ba, the Name, the Ab, which is the heart. You can go on and on. The shadow. There are all these different classifications, and this is a whole other area of the wisdom of priestess traditions, is these abilities to name and understand relationship of different kinds of power and essence moving through nature and through ourselves. Mm. So, I don't know what's happening. I'm trying to change slides here. There we go. Oh, this is good, though, because, see, here it is from New Mexico.
New Mexico.
And Arizona. This one is Arizona. This one is New Mexico. And she's holding up prayer feathers. So these are prayer fans that I was talking about. That's probably what we're looking at here as well. So this is it in the context of these ancient desert societies of the Southwest. And, you know, a lot of different gestures, a lot of dance moves, and then you take it into present time. And this is a women's circle in the Hopi tradition that you don't see getting written about so much, but it's really a women's circle ceremony. You know, and you've got the baskets or the drums being shown there. And so this is why we have to be able to sort of really track the societies that don't have a written tradition in Native North America, in Eastern Africa, or wherever we, you know, are looking. Because, in fact, there are very profound women's mysteries traditions, women's medicine societies, among here the matrilineal Mandan, the Hidatsa, the Blackfeet, and other cultures of the Northern Plains, just as one example. But this is something where you have multiple layers of censorship going on, because you have the separation of, you know, the conquest of North America. You have not only the loss of female traditions at large, but you have the genocide and racism severing our ability to even know what people had in Anishinaabeg or Ojibwa cultures, or any of the native nations, where, you know, because of this cultural destruction and this forced conversion, that, you know, it's not visible. And that's a process that began much earlier in Europe. So you've got, these are from Russia, from a corner of Russia in the eastern Siberian side, where you have pagan traditions surviving into the 1300s, that late. And so you have women doing sacred dance. These are these long sleeves that are here seem to be connected with water symbolism. Rain-making dances, possibly. You see little spirit faces. And here again, in a spirit coming forth, she's gesturing with one hand, and a bird is coiling out of there. She's brought a spirit into presence with the libation cup. They're both holding an offering cup in their hand. So Europe has a lot of rich things to search out, too, besides the Mediterranean traditions that we hear the most about. The Norse, and here's another place where paganism survived much longer. You have the Vala, or the Vulva, the different ways they say that word. This is named for female shamans in Norse culture. And so she's dancing with a sword, and maybe that's a feather fan, maybe that's a branch, on top of what is called the high seat, the Seidhjal. And so you've got this representation of trance dance, and you've got a man who's fallen into a dream state there below her, below the priestess. And then down here we have this kind of horned being, which is already starting to drift into the diabolist, devil worship traditions that got built up under the church, and the beating down of these older shamanic ways and wisdom ways. So sacred staves, all of this. And I could go on, but I think we should wrap. Huh?
Oh, well, keep going. You got time.
Oh, okay.
We want to see this.
Yeah, this is good. Well, you know,
anybody who wants to leave can leave. Not a single soul has left.
Okay. The sacred staves, this is another chapter in the Women Shaman DVD. Sahara, Southern Africa, Japan, there's all these different places where you've got sacred staves in play. And so here's the example of them in the tradition of the Vulva in Scandinavia. So I was Googling this one time, just looking around. I was looking for an image of that last slide that you just saw, and I ran across a great Danish article about burials they have found of Völler, that's the plural of Vulva, and who are buried with these sacred staves and with medicine bags. You can see some of the regalia that she was buried with. This is one of the things that has little duck foot pendants coming off of it. And so a little glimpse into their medicine ways. And there are numbers of these. But here's the interesting thing. We also have an oral tradition that was written down around 1200 or so out of one of the Greenlandish sagas that talks about a Vala who went from traveling around from village to village. And they talk about her cape that was made out of cat skins. Here it's shown as cloth. And her medicine bag and her staff. And some etymologists think that the word Vala or Vulva is actually derived from a root that means staff in Old Norse language. So these are staves of power. They are connections with the earth. They draw power from the heavens and into the earth. They direct power, and there's a whole lot of different ways these are used in different ceremonial traditions. Just like the ritual fans. And I'm glad actually we're getting here to West Africa, because this is a really important stronghold of priestess traditions in the world today. Whether you're talking here in Ghana with the Ashanti peoples, or with the Yoruba, and there's a lot of other places. Here, these are ancient Yoruba for really medieval Yoruba. Here again, the herbal bundle as a ritual fan. And here you've got the horns of the bush cow, which is connected with the Orisa Oya. So these are probably priestesses. And here's another one. This is more modern, a bronze piece. And you've got a priestess who has two snakes coiled around her body. And then this very interesting tall peaked headdress, which you also see in Southern African rock art, and you see it in Australian rock art. And for that matter, you find something rather similar to this, maybe not quite as tall, in ancient Egypt, this was the crown, the white crown of the south. Egyptian tradition.
Which they've never found one of.
Of the crowns?
They've never found one of them.
Crowns?
No, the white crowns. It's kind of interesting. It's always depicted, but they have never found them.
You know what? That makes me think that they must have been made out of wool or linen or something. Something perishable. That's an interesting fact. Yeah, here's the shakery that I was talking about before. You've got beads suspended from a gourd. So this is a percussion instrument. And so, again, ritual dance is being depicted here. And there's also, a lot of this, there's a bias of European and Christian perception. So down here it says in French, féticheuse, fetish women. And this term fetish is derived from a Portuguese word that means sorcery. So this is some of the signature of the witch hunts that's being imprinted on European perceptions of shamanic traditions in other parts of the world. And so that's something that's still with it, that kind of language. This is from a wonderful book which you can get online by Sophie Drinker. It's called Women and Music, or maybe it's Music and Women. Anyway, it's available online. And so you've got these lunar crescent diadems that these priestesses are wearing in Dahomey, and also look at this interesting quadrant icon that they're wearing. You know, so this is a group of women, and we just have this one photo, but you know that there's a whole series of litanies, of dances, of drum patterns, of deities that are all bound up with their reverence. You know, you can see the temple space there behind them as well. And a lot of these priestess traditions in Africa are very dynamic. They're ecstatic. They're shamanic. They are about bringing the spirit fully through. Nobody is sitting there thinking, how do I look? You know, this is some of the afflictions of Western culture. They are going all the way in as deep as they can, and they're pulling that spirit through and performing acts of power that are transformative for their communities. So you can see how rich this is still, because there are, like, you know, these photos would have been taken in the last 15 or 20 years at the very earliest. And you can also see traces of white kaolin clay that the women have painted up. This is a symbol of the ancestral realm, the spirit world, as their white dress also designates. The beads are important in West Africa. A lot of times these are heirloom beads from their family traditions, from their ancestors. And so you have high priestesses in these societies. And this is something that, you know, after you've been raised with Catholicism, or, you know, rabbinical, or, you know, only men can be public imams for the entire community, all these different patriarchal traditions, even the bans on female pujaris in Orthodox Hinduism, you have something very different here, because they can recognize a woman as the ultimate authority. And so that's very important for us to see and realize that what we've been told about spiritual leadership is very much culturally specific to patriarchy, you know, and all the different forms of patriarchy. So we got to know that, because there are, you know, these really major world traditions that do it very differently. And they're ones, not coincidentally, where you have that ecstatic invocation of the divine that Amma models for us so beautifully. You have them modeling it. Oops, my battery's starting to go here. Oops. Okay, anyway, we can learn from this, because this is what we're looking for, is how do we get there? You know, how do we bring ourselves into alignment, into congruence with that which is ultimate and deep and sacred and eternal, and that vastness that's lapping like waves on our shore all the time, if we can only wake up enough to recognize that it's present in us and around us. So we better stop there, because
I went through a phase where I made many staffs, and this is one of my favorites. And she sits in my living room, and she gets a little more decoration each year. And so, you know, the staff making, it doesn't have to die out. You can do it. I mean, this is basically a piece of driftwood that has been created into, I'm going to put it back to me.
I'm trying to get you on the screen again.
I'm doing it.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
And so that, you know, I was just sharing this piece here, which is my little lady staff, and I have several others, including some that are big, 8-foot tall ones that I found out the hard way. You don't walk around with them unless you want to hit somebody. But you know, the other thing I wanted to mention, and this is something that I found out whenever I was down in Maya land, is, you know, you see those faces on the Mayans and you think, oh, those are extremely exaggerated features. And then you go over and pay 5 cents for the toilet paper to go in and you see the same face. Those are the faces of the Maya. That's what they look like. They have that extreme face. And they're very fascinating people. So
they did do head binding though.
Yeah.
So that the skulls are distorted.
Yeah, but now you still see that extreme nose shape, even though they're not doing the head binding anymore. They still have that extreme shape of the nose, like a hatchet, and the forehead.
It's all relative. It's all relative.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all have our physical traits.
Well, and they're very beautiful people, but as I said, it's a very different. I mean, it's hard sometimes to look at them and think we came from the same genetic mix, and that's another discussion for another time. So, but that was fabulous, Max. Everybody, Sonia Eisenhart says she is just loving this. And thank you so much. That was wonderful.
You're welcome. And can I just say that I will be doing a full webcast of this presentation in the fall, and I'm also going to be featuring it at the Gaia conference in Sydney in the end of October. If there's any Aussies tuned in here,
we have a large Aussie contingent. Yes.
So that'll be coming up.
Yeah.
Again.
Anita Raven Moon says beautiful. Marieshka Evans says amazing. Beautiful discussions. So they're really enjoying this. They really enjoyed that presentation. And please let us have information, and we'll send out a link to it so that everybody can come and see the whole presentation.
Okay.
And we appreciate that. Your work is magnificent, and your explanation is very helpful. So
thank you.
Yeah. So, and everybody, thank you so much for being here. Janine, thank you for your poetry. It is quite lovely and wonderful. Max, thank you for your presentations and all your hard work and scholarship for all these years to recover all these images. And you do have a number of presentations on suppressedhistories.net. Am I correct? Suppressedhistories.net. And by the way, if you've ever seen the ads for any of the shows on Facebook, I actually have an image there that I borrowed from Suppressed Histories, and I give her credit. So if you have any doubts about it, it's always going to be there. And she also has an incredible Facebook page with hundreds of thousands of followers that she posts on every day, and has a lot of more information there. So, and please visit, and please give your information. We want to know more about you too, you that are listening to these shows. I know that some of you probably got that registration thing today, and you wanted to know, what in the world do you mean? Tell me something about you. I want to know more about who I'm talking to, because I want to talk to you a whole lot more. And I want you to offer you what it is that will work for you, because you see, this is all about creating a culture of priesthood, of priestesshood, supporting you as we go forth. So I want to thank you again for being here tonight, and ask you to please come back on Friday night, because Normandy Ellis and Nano Nagel will be here, and that will be the last one in this multicast program. In the middle of August, we will be beginning doing the single shows per week, and we will be starting with Tamas Renteria, who is one of the authors that's in the book, who's in the process of moving from Tucson, Arizona to, I believe, Sonoma County. I'm not positive. So anyway, we look forward to seeing you all back then, and thank you very much, and good night.
Good night.
Right.